Mike and Maurice's Mind Escape. We have episode number 92 today. To the Stars Academy, TTSA, with our good buddy Matt Tiller's back. You can check us out at patreon.com/Mike and Maurice. For $2 a month, we have some exclusive content, audio and videos on there. There's a list of all of our social media stuff. And you can check Matt out on his YouTube channel at Tiller for Riller. We have his information down below the video as well. What's going on, Matt? How are you?
Oh, man, I'm doing great. How are you guys?
Good to have you back on the show. You're our resident UFO alien guy.
Yeah, sure. I've been called worse.
So I wanted to talk to you a little bit about all the recent stuff. Since you've been on, there's a lot of stuff that's happened with To the Stars Academy and announcements and tweets and reports and different things. I guess one of which is they renewed Unidentified for a second season, which is interesting. I wonder what the topic will be about that. They did announce some other things, and they've released some videos. I just wanted your take on some of that stuff. Like, what was your take on that when they kept saying that something was coming, like a new video or something big, and then they released that video of that like light orb that was in that like clean room or whatever? Do you think that was a joke, or what do you think was going on there?
I'm not really sure. I'm not clear. I think that the video is probably not going to be like a UFO video, but rather the result of some scientific exploration or results of scientific research. That's my personal opinion. I could be very wrong. Maybe it is something unique, but it appeared to me to be something related to metamaterial research. I'll say that.
Yeah, so
it appeared to be related to metamaterials.
They did announce that too, that they, that was the big announcement recently, was that they were joining up with the U.S. Army, and that they were going to exchange information and give them access to the metamaterial. And so, do you know, though, where do the metamaterials that they got, where did it come from? Do you have any knowledge of that, or?
All I know is what has been reported. There's rumors that some of the materials come from Art's Parts, which had ties with Linda Moulton Howe, who is like my what do you call, like the Woman Crush Wednesday or whatever. Like I think, I don't know, it sounds kind of weird, but dude, I think she's like such an awesome lady.
She's to anybody, Linda Moulton Howe is a UFO journalist. I'm sure if anybody that's seen Ancient Aliens or any sort of ancient or alien, show on TV, she's usually one of the people on there. And she's a real journalist, though, too. I think she's got good credentials as far as where she went to school.
Totally. She's I don't know, man. She's a pretty good looking lady too. I know she's a lot older than me, but whatever. I'm just saying, like, I don't know. That's why I'm saying she's like my Woman Crush Wednesday or whatever you want to call it. Those hashtags from like a few years ago. Anyways, all to humor aside and stuff. And I've heard fragments from Rendlesham Forest, which would not surprise me. I've heard fragments of the alleged Roswell crash, or what was near Roswell. It's all rumor and speculation. Some things have come from private citizens, and I'll just tell you what Steve Justice told me, okay, in the interview that we did. Here's something interesting real quick. I actually had the phone conversation interview with Steve and Tom's sister, Carrie DeLong, who has a lot to do with To the Stars Media. It was a group conversation. I had permission to record to help me take notes and stuff. I have like a dysgraphia. It's kind of hard for me to write and stuff. Yeah. Anyways, and just saying. So that was October the 17th, 2018. The news about the Army came out on October 17th, 2019, exactly 1 year to the date. And what Steve told me in the interview from 2018 was that, like, I asked what their first year of progress was like, and he said a lot slower than he had expected. And that was hard for me to accept because, you look up to people who are doing really cool things, especially people who you esteem as like rock and roll idols,
Yeah.
and you think everything's okay, you have enough money, everything's okay. So that kind of shocked me. And he said that, funding was low and progress was slow for the first year. I also did not know that 2 days before we had the interview was when Ars Technica released the mischaracterized news report that they were $37.5 million in debt. At any rate.
Can I stop you for a second? Your thing's still
sure.
pretty loud. It's rubbing on your shirt.
Sorry about that.
No, you're good.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So, he said funding was low and progress was slow. And exactly 1 year to the date, they have funding and they have research facilities. So they've got the support and they've got the money they need. And I'm really excited about that. If my Mensa article had any type of support or push to make those things happen, I'm very, very proud. And if not, hey, I did my best. I tried my best. But
yeah.
Steve said that it was a giant detective work that they had going on with the Atom Project, that they are essentially looking at pieces of something and trying to figure out what the entire machine is. And sometimes you might be looking at part of a carburetor from a 57 Chevy. I mean, you have no idea until you start to research and analyze what these things are. And then he said something like, you don't know that the piece of metal or material you might be looking at could have something to do with another function of the machine. And I said, like, for example, like the glove compartment, like the glove box,
Mm-hmm.
And he said, exactly, it's like you could be looking at the glove box of the machine, which has nothing to do with the way it functions. And then from that one piece, you're trying to decipher the entire engineered process of how the machine works.
Right.
And that's why it's so difficult.
Can I make a suggestion? Because that's still. Do you have a T-shirt on? I would just recommend maybe that, because the collar seems to be rubbing up on your mic.
Yeah, just take off the dress shirt.
Yeah.
Here we go.
Anybody listening, his dress shirt is rubbing up against his mic, causing a little friction. I just want the audio to be clear, though, because what you're saying is some pretty good stuff, and I just want
so let's just let the record show you guys are a bad influence on me. And
I'm telling you, you're the one who brought this up in the first place, bro.
Oh my gosh!
No, but yeah,
things I never thought I would ever do, like disrobe on live on camera, YouTube TV. Yeah.
You're good. Now we're good. We're good.
In the middle of talking about how to program a UFO, nonetheless.
Yeah.
Yeah. What am I doing here? Okay. Reverse meditation.
Oh, that's bad. That's what I'm
801 beads. Okay. All right. Is that cool?
Yeah, you're good. You're good now.
Oh, you're welcome. Show my tattoos.
There you go. Oh, yeah. We got a real gun show happening here now.
I have to step out for a second here. I don't know.
Okay.
So yeah.
I totally turned the attention on myself there. Sorry about that. Is that better?
No, you're good, dude.
Perfect.
Thank you for doing that.
Great.
I just want to make sure the audio is clean for our listeners, because, like I said, what you're saying is some good stuff. So.
Yeah, it's just a giant detective work that they've got going on. It would, just to rehash in case something interfered. You've got a small piece of a machine that could have nothing to do with the way the machine operates, and you're trying to assess a system based on that one small piece. So, it could be like finding like the lanyard of like a keychain, right? And then you're trying to figure out how the car actually works.
Right. That makes sense.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So what do you think, though, about the relationship now with two things? Tom DeLonge just tweeted out a few days ago that To the Stars Academy, TTSA, is not a UFO research group. They are an entertainment, media, whatever you want to call it, type of group. That was the one tweet you mentioned, but then also they announced that they are partnering up with the Army. So what do you think about those two things? Do you think that has any impact on what they're doing? Do you think they're kind of changing course a little bit for whatever reason, or what do you think's happening there?
I think that there might be several things at play. First of all, the term UFO for mainstream society is a loaded term, and it's almost like a racial slur because of all of the negative attention it has received over the years, not by the UFO community per se, but by media, by some government officials. Just people, when they hear the term UFO, they think it's almost laughable.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't equate it to a racial slur, but what I would say is that you're right. It's kind of gotten the name itself, or the acronym's gotten a bad hype, bad press. Like you said, the laugh factor back in the day, they would use it to make fun of people. Oh, you saw a UFO, ha 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 ha. So you're right in that regard. Like, they've definitely. I still use it. I mean, because what are we going to use? UAP? Like, what are we going to use? I don't.
Yeah, I say UFO too. It depends on who I'm talking to. If I'm, and I think that's where the basis of Tom's tweet was probably not in communication with the UFO community or people who are already on board, but rather it might reflect who he's communicating more with now. And who he's communicating more with now are mainstream that don't want that stigma attached to research. It's kind of like the research I'm doing now. My focus is psychological, and I'm not going to get into all the details, but there is a component of comparison to all of the evidence that's come out in the videos and things like that. So I'm kind of researching the societal reactions to the UFO phenomenon vicariously through a larger purpose. And that's really, right now, I think that's the best we've got. It's almost like, let's say you approach your landlord and you say, an alien broke in my house last night, abducted me and broke this window, versus this window broke, I don't know how, I have no idea, something or someone got in the house last night. You see, so you approach your landlord with the word alien,
right?
And instantly your landlord thinks you're an idiot and you're lying,
right?
But you approach with just the actual event, or like the actual evidence of the broken window or whatever, then it's more believable. Until you mention alien, then your landlord's going to think you're a liar.
For sure. So I guess my question is, do you think that, I don't know, it seems like there was all this momentum, which there still is. Everybody's still talking about all this stuff. Twitter, UFO Twitter's on fire every single day. People constantly fighting about stuff back and forth, I'm not going to name names, but you got people that run other podcasts and radio shows. You've got people that run websites dedicated to Freedom of Information Act. You've got a lot of people fighting about a lot of dumb shit, and everybody wants to be the dude. Everybody wants to be the guy that comes up with the answers or has the go-to.
Breaks first, yeah.
Yeah, and it's almost like a microcosm of the actual news, and it's like I don't like following what those people are doing just because they're not really contributing anything. Like, for instance, like anybody that looks up Freedom of Information Act stuff, if you think you're going to get answers from that, you are just not that intelligent. I'm sorry, because if this stuff is as big as it is, you think that they're just going to release documents that explain everything for you, for the public and everything? No, this is all connected to either private sector stuff, whether it be like Skunk Works, the private companies, Bell Labs, like any of those types of companies. And I don't think that if it is tied to our military, there's probably still levels of secrecy that they can be, upheld. So I don't think that that aspect of it's not going anywhere. I mean, yeah, it might verify things, or it might add value to things that we already know, or like, look, this was real and it's verified now 50 years later, or whatever like that. But for the people that are researching these things, I think it's just kind of like, okay, it's taking a step back, just waiting for things to be verified by the government. It just seems like counterproductive when we all have the ability to look into this phenomenon ourselves. Like, you're doing your research, and we'll pull it up later. You made a whole chart and a presentation and stuff. And for somebody like me, I think consciousness is at the forefront of all this stuff. And I just read their God's Man in War, part 2, which was man, and then the whole book's pretty much the premise is consciousness, what we know about consciousness, all the scientific studies that have gone into with like Stuart Hameroff and Sir Roger Penrose with the microtubules and different explanations for it, and then where it's going. They talk about later in the book is a lot about the AI aspect of it and what that would mean if we are able to recreate our humanity in some other form. So I thought that was cool. It was nothing really new from stuff that I've already studied, but I thought the order that they went in and the content that they put out there was credible. So but I guess my point is you can look into these things yourself. So, I mean, you can look into consciousness, There's a whole psychedelic aspect to this whole thing that people don't talk about. People are smoking DMT and doing ayahuasca ceremonies every day that are in contact with entities from another dimension or another world, and that seems to be lost upon this whole thing. And I just would like to hear more from like Hal Puthoff and the consciousness part of their group,
I met Hal in March, and he's a really cool guy. I chose just to enjoy the moment to meet him and say hello, shake his hand, and speak a little bit. We talked a little bit about the article I had done and the overall goals of TTSA. And to be honest, I know a lot about his work already, so I didn't really want to jump. Any questions I had are able to be researched on Google. So I just enjoyed meeting him. I'm being serious. He's a really nice guy. He just he seems like a very humble, a very humble spirit, and very wise. I mean, wise beyond his years. I would love to sit down and really just let him speak and just listen. I would enjoy the opportunity just to be Hal Puthoff's disciple for one day, man. And just listen to the man speak, because he's wow. But yeah, I think
he already remote viewed your brain, bro. So I don't know.
Well, yeah, maybe he did. Yeah. I don't know. Yeah, that whole process might have taken 1 or 2 seconds. So it's not much to
you already scanned it, bro, using the ghost of Ingo Swann. He got you.
Ooh, yeah. I think right now we're in like this odd limbo stage. It's almost like there was such a big push to get over that big hill first, and so like you said, there was so much momentum, and everyone was like denying it or supporting it, and it's almost like the game has changed so radically that nobody really knows what to do right now, and no one knows exactly which direction it's going to take. But from what I understand and from what I deduct through my own opinions, I'm not going to say I represent any agency or organization, is that by the time everything is out, there's a lot more coming that is going to be some bombshell type of stuff. One thing I heard, one idea I heard tossed around, is there's going to be either like places where people can go, like, I'm not saying like not like an event, not like a staged event, but okay, for example, there, what a dark park is, or a star park.
Yeah.
Yeah, like dark. I think in
yeah,
Michigan, we
yeah.
were in astronomy class. I think when we were younger, I don't know if it still is, but in Michigan, there's this place called Peach Island, where people would
Cool.
go and do astrophotography and use their telescopes and that kind of stuff.
Awesome. So, from what I can deduct, it sounds like there might be places like that to observe unidentified aerial phenomenon where people can go lay out on a blanket under the night sky and see what they can see. That there will be certain spots identified around the earth where people can go and observe these things. Some on a time, like you could some of the things you can actually predict the day and the time in which they're going to appear and do whatever things that they are. It's not necessarily a natural phenomenon, but it might have something to do with AI in that it recurs for whatever purpose that may be. I don't know.
So what about like, are you familiar with the von Neumann probe theory that, civilizations could send out self-replicating probes, and like what you're saying, they just kind of replicate and start scanning the entire universe or, solar system or whatever?
Possibly. I think that a lot of the ways in which we as human beings observe our planet through video, surveillance, tagging animals, the technologies that we use like now with drones. Drones have been excellent for being able to observe the earth and environmental change, erosion, the migration of animals. I think that a lot of those types of things are done, and assuming that these things are an extraterrestrial intelligence, right? Assuming that is the case, it would make sense to me on that premise that some of these devices are for monitoring or for surveillance, not like in a threatening way, but just in a knowledgeable way. I mean, why do scientists want to observe birds or the ice glaciers?
Right.
They don't want to do harm,
Right.
but they want to know. They want to know what's going on so they can keep track of things. So, okay, example. The Navy pilots had encountered the the sphere with a cube inside of it, right? That seems kind of odd for a classic UFO. Maybe it was some type of surveillance monitor device. Maybe it was a camera. I've often theorized that the first type of time travel into the past, or maybe the only type of time travel into the past, will be through vision only, like video, like watching a replication of a video. So you can actually do that today by going outside and looking at the night sky, because all of the stars that you see are the way that they were, not the way that they are.
Right.
A helicopter just flew over my house. That's crazy.
They're coming for you,
Wonder
bro.
why.
They're honing in.
They heard
They
this
might be.
podcast and they
They
know.
probably have a drone right out your
Halloween.
window, man.
Can I tell you something funny with it being Halloween?
Sure.
My youngest daughter is dressing up as an alien. She's got this little mask thing that we got from Amazon, and I'm going to be a Man in Black. So every house that she goes to, I'm like 1 minute behind her, and I'm going to tell the residents of the home that they saw nothing. This was a non-event. They did not see an alien, and they did not give it candy.
Nice.
Yeah.
And get a
And
second
you just keep
batch.
going back to the same house over and over again.
Yeah.
What do you mean? You didn't see me?
Did you take a picture of that alien with the Kit Kat in her hand with your cell phone? I must
You
confiscate
have a
your cell
laser
phone.
you can blast people in the eyes with?
Yeah. Oh man, not legally.
So, so back on track here. Do you think that, like I said, there's all this infighting right now within the UFO community? You've got some people that believe To the Stars Academy is doing great work and they're happy with everything. You have other people that say no. The main, I guess, crux or the main thing that people fight over is whether Luis Elizondo was really the head of ATIP, or if he was part of it, or if he was even involved at all. I know you've got people, again, I'm not going to name names. These people, anybody listening to this that's familiar with the UFO Twitter will know who I'm talking about. But you have people constantly going after the fact that they say that Luis Elizondo wasn't part of it, or blah 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 blah. But here's my thing: is even if take Luis Elizondo out of it completely, that doesn't diminish, the Colonel Fravor stuff. That doesn't diminish the videos. That doesn't diminish the anomalous stuff that all these pilots are seeing. I mean, we've talked. I had my buddy on not that long ago who was on the USS Nimitz for a few years when he was in the Navy, and said that it's just common knowledge that kind of stuff happens, and it's not that weird even for the people that are on the carrier and stuff. So.
Yeah, he said he saw some like force field.
He saw, when he was out east in Virginia, he said he saw like a weird jellyfish type thing in the sky on like New Year's night, where which was kind of everybody else was gone home for the holidays, but there was like a group of people there that saw this thing. But it just goes.
Do you guys remember? There was our second interview that I told you about this DVD, Not Alone. Scott.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's what he actually talks about, the sky jellyfish theory, that some of the anomalies we see might be gelatinous invertebrate that are capable of flying. He explains it, but yeah.
Yeah, so it basically, the premise would be some sort of organism that lives in the sky that we're unaware of, or maybe they have some sort of capability beyond our knowledge or something like that. Is that pretty much the premise there?
Yeah, that it would be like an animal that
almost like the ocean. I mean, that makes some sense.
He actually says that they have a manner of living in the sky, and that some of them actually are capable of traveling between here and other places in outer space. I mean, like, I know that sounds totally insane. I get it. But if you hear him explain it, it doesn't sound too far-fetched. And again, I don't really think that there's much of anything that's very far-fetched. Once all of this information is out, this is my main concern. I'll just be honest here. The fighting among the UFO community is not what concerns me the most, because I'm not trying to be the guy that's got the next card in the deck, or the next piece of the puzzle, or the next smoking gun. That's not me. I don't have time for that personally. Like, me personally, like, do I love when someone else finds a smoking gun? Absolutely. It's fascinating. But anyways, I can always separate myself from that when people are being too rude or insulting too much.
It's not even, I don't have a problem with it either. I find it entertaining. Yeah. I've tweeted many times, like, this is like watching a Greek tragedy, like, this is it's just one of those things where it's like, I see the bickering. It's almost, in a couple of the people that have large followings, they'll nitpick every single tweet too. They'll go through and address every single person like they have an axe to grind. And it's just, I just find it interesting that the people are really going to spend their time like that. Like, if you really have that much to offer, then you should have no time to address anybody in those manners. You put the information out there, let people decide for themselves, and all that. But yeah, you've got this whole like toxic thing going. I find the people that I agree with are people in the middle on all this stuff, which is just that, they address that there is a phenomenon, that it could be consciousness related. Maybe it's not. Maybe it is a physical material phenomenon, but at the same time, we don't really have that, that much, knowledge of the subject yet to make clear declarations or empirical statements or whatever. So it's like, I think the smartest people on the subject are the people willing to change their minds or change their opinions when new data presents itself. You know what I'm saying? So
good point.
And that's a good scientist in general, in my opinion, is somebody open to new paradigms and new knowledge and everything. So
yeah, totally. Where I kind of view myself in all of that is I'm on the outside, not one side or the other, or even in the middle. I'm on the outside. I'm looking at the entire issue. These are my concerns. So you've got, let's just say this keychain here. I'll steal my cell phone. Let's say this right here. This is the issue or the presence of UFOs, and we don't know if it's extraterrestrial. We don't know if it's crypto-terrestrial. We don't know what it is, but here it is. So what we have here is finally we have this. We can look at it. The government and the Navy have said, yeah, there it is, right there. We can see it. Here's my concern. One, people from the UFO community who have always kind of like had this in their domain, want it back. They want it back, and so they're going to try to keep people from harming this. They want to protect it, and they get real defensive of it, whatever it is. They may even think that To the Stars is trying to take it away, or say it's not here. No, you don't actually see this, So that's one. Second is that here we are. Okay. Do you believe this is real? Yeah. Can we point to it that it's real? Yes. And then someone comes along and says, I could make money off of this. And then all of a sudden it's not UFOs anymore. It's high technology. The 3 easy papers of 1999. And then it's the first draft I wrote for the article included a little story called Bacon, Egg, and Cheese Sandwiches. And this is what it was. When I was a kid, my dad had me and my 2 sisters home one evening, and he was going to cook us dinner. And he didn't have any food in the house. Like we didn't have much food. We had milk but no cereal, peanut butter and no jelly. So he said, well, kids, I can make bacon, egg, and cheese sandwiches. And we're like, no, that's gross. I mean, I was like 5 years old. So
that sounds delicious to me.
Totally, man. Yeah. So he said, okay, well, look, kids, you like bacon. Yeah. You like eggs. Yeah. You like toast. Yeah. You like cheese. Yeah. Bacon, egg, and cheese sandwiches. No. So finally he was like, okay, all right. Let me just do my thing. I'll make you some sandwiches and you come eat. So he started cooking bacon, egg, and cheese sandwiches. And we, after a little bit of play, and we come into the kitchen, it smells great. We're asking him what it is. And he's like, I'm not telling you. It's a surprise. And so he took cookie cutters and cut them into nice little fun shapes, right? And then ta-da, surprise sandwiches, yay. And we're like eating the surprise sandwiches. Oh, it's so good. So then about halfway through dinner, he said to us, do you want me to tell you what these actually are? And we're like, yeah, what is it? What are these surprise sandwiches made of? And he said they're bacon, egg, and cheese sandwiches. And we didn't believe him. We thought he was lying, right? And my fear in all of this is not necessarily that the UFO community is going to destroy any progress through trying to gatekeep or put this wherever they want to put it. My biggest fear is that a Fortune 500 company is going to come along and say bacon, egg, and cheese sandwiches, and everyone's going to love it. But then you tell them the source, you tell them is this thing that you love actually came from the technology from a downed UFO, and no one believes you.
Right.
That's, yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Bacon, egg, and cheese sandwiches.
I mean, yeah, I mean, I said, my take on it, I'm a watcher. You hear all these, like the watchers, I'm like a watcher. I just sit back, my own business. I just watch all this stuff unfold, just collecting, information. And then also I find it interesting the way that people react to certain things and why that might be. And, I think that there's people within the UFO community that are physical materialists that acknowledge now that there is something there, but they still want to control that narrative. They still want to be like, well, we still got to find the evidence, or the government's still got to say this, or that we're gonna, so it's like you're confronted with this paradigm, but these people don't know what to do with it. They're like, I'm gonna do my best to prove it through, the videos, or do my best to prove it through, freedom of information, or do my best to prove it through interviews, or whatever the case may be. And the whole time, there's been this phenomenon staring you right in the face, kind of like what you're saying. So I guess my problem is just the pettiness of it. It's like, come on, dude, get over yourself. There's a lot of ego involved. There's a lot of people that want the praise, want the followers, want the subscribers, whatever the case may be. And it's just like, just put the information out there. If you're really after truth, it shouldn't matter how much you're making from it. It shouldn't matter how many people follow you. I guess that's just my whole take on it. And if people follow you, cool. If you're after real truth, it'll come out. And if you're just doing it as a business, I think that's pretty obvious too. So I think that's where part of the disconnect comes from as well. But moving on too. So back to the to the stars stuff. So what do you think is the biggest, or actually let's go back to that tweet that Tom DeLonge tweeted out about being a media and entertainment company and not a UFO research group. What do you think that tweet was, and why do you think it came out the way it did, and then people started interpreting it different ways?
All right, so did he refresh my memory? Did he say that to the stars was not a UFO research company, or that To the Stars Academy of Arts and Science was?
I don't remember this. You're right. I mean, I'd have to pull it up, but specifically,
that's okay. Well, if he said To the Stars, then that's pretty easy, because To the Stars Media or To the Stars Incorporated is about music, predominantly Angels and Airwaves, cool band. Literature, which is fiction books. I actually met AJ Hartley a couple of months ago.
Oh yeah,
yeah, and he's a cool guy.
Yeah.
So Poet Anderson, Strange Times,
yeah,
those types of things. So yeah, that is, that's not UFO research. But if he's talking about TTSA not being a UFO research group, that's actually true. They're researching these materials that have been brought to them, and they are not saying, and they never have said that these are UFOs. They have not even said that they're really UAPs. So they refer to these machines as the exotic aircraft or aircraft of unknown origin. When the first draft I wrote was a learning curve for like journalism, and secondly for how to communicate this information in a way that people are not going to turn it away. And I think, okay, so in the way you communicate a message, right, I think some people catch on to the fact that certain schools of thought or certain bits of information or certain topics are being communicated in a very specific and pragmatic way. And they can sense that there's some type of organization or methodology behind the words and behind the stories. And they suspect something's being organized, something's being premeditated. It must be bad. It must be a cover-up. But actually, I think that it's the opposite. It is, they are trying to do an uncover up. And the only way that you're going to get people to take this matter seriously is by learning how to effectively communicate that. And that goes with anything. It goes with business. It goes with teaching. It goes with being a lawyer. You have to present your case in a way that people are going to understand, right? So if okay, let's take Billy Joe from Green Day. What if he started an organization and then went around trying to tell everybody, hey, check out, I got a piece of metal from a UFO.
I got a piece of dookie.
Yeah, from the UFO septic system. Yeah, because the ETs they got waste too, right? I mean, Piece of dookie. But you see what I mean?
Yeah.
It's and I don't mean to like, Uncle Tom this issue or anything. No pun intended, Uncle Tom. I'm not trying to like give a cop out here, but like I'm being serious. Like, think about it. If they do, let's just take it at face value. Let's just say that yes, they do have my alarm clock's unplugged. They do have a piece of metal or something that came from an aircraft that appeared at 80,000 feet, dropped to 60,000 feet at about 17,000 miles an hour, and then went from 60,000 straight down to 50 feet above the ocean and hovered motionless before our F-18s came and chased them away, in which it zipped off at hypersonic speeds above Mach 5 over 3,800 miles an hour away. And we have a piece of metal from that. Okay. Now, it's one thing to say we have a piece of metal from that craft. It's another thing to say we are capable of taking small pieces of this and analyzing its physical properties. If we expose it to heat, we could see how it could potentially react in Earth's atmosphere if it were in flight. The piece of metal this thing came from an aircraft that seemed to defy the laws of physics as we currently understand them. Therefore, if we can take this piece of metal and analyze its physical properties and compare it to what we already understand, we could potentially develop technology that could benefit mankind for eons to come.
Right.
It may be transportation. It may not be transportation. We don't know. So if that is the case, right, you, me, we would be like, oh yeah, totally on board. That, pardon my language, scares the out of somebody in society. It frightens people. It really does. I've seen it happen. Steve told me something I've already seen, but I'm glad that he like quantified it here. He said there are three reactions. There's the positive reaction, a typical reaction, and a negative reaction. The positive reaction is if I bring up the topic of this, the thing, people will politely listen, and then they'll change the subject, and they won't say anything. So they don't engage it. The positive response, ironically, the positive response is the giggle factor, where people are laughing. I mean, I've seen this. I did a presentation over the weekend. Not UFO related, but I had some footage there, and I watched people in the room start to like, you can't be, like, looking around at other people like, you can't be serious. Serious? And then they started doing this. So they're on their phones, and I'm like, dude, look what I'm showing you. Right. But because it was a presentation and because this is rude, they eventually had to start watching, and then they started doing this. What does that mean? They're protect. Yeah. You see? So like the negative response is just outright attack, in which someone will just lash out at you because of this. And if this being turned into technology that could potentially save lives, which is what Steve told me, like, if all the obstacles were gone and every goal of TTSA could be achieved instantly, that was my fifth question. How would our world be better? He said disaster relief supplies delivered to hurricane sites and stuff instantly, right where they're needed. The golden hour. If you're in a medical crisis, and we're being real world here, a medical crisis, as much as I don't want to talk about a heart attack, I don't want to talk about a stroke, it happens. If I'm in a medical crisis, a doctor has about 1 hour to save my life. And half of that hour is spent getting me to the emergency room. Most of the time. So he said, what if we could deliver the medical team or whatever the person needed right to the scene where it was needed? And that's real. The
Right.
thing is this is not fantasy anymore. It can't be unreal. And getting a Fortune 500 company to get on board with you about that, you have to present yourself very clear and very careful.
Yeah, I think,
If
but I
you
think
got to be real careful.
I think the response to why he put that tweet out, there was a couple tweets, but it was because people were pissed off, investors, people that have been fans of TTSA or fanboys, whatever you want to call them,
Yeah.
that they're pissed off because they released the Bob Lazar bio,
Oh yeah.
and that was under their publisher, I guess, and so they released a statement saying, you know, we're an entertainment company, blah 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 blah. So it seemed like this tweet was related to that as well, in the sense that, like, yeah, we're gonna put out stuff that we want to put out, whether you believe it or not, and not everything's tied to the credibility of this phenomena. Is kind of what I gathered from that. But at the same time, I mean, we've talked about it too. Who knows what the Lazar thing? You know, I keep going back and forth on it. I think that it's entirely possible that he worked there, saw things that didn't make sense, and that was his deduction from working there. Now, whether it could have been ours already, it could have been something we'd already been working on, and that's why it was compartmentalized. Who knows? But the fact goes is, like, everybody's, I think, afraid to speak their true intentions or put what they really think out there. You know, everybody tiptoes around everything, and I think that's a problem. I think it's just
Exactly.
like, say what you mean and
Yes.
mean what you say. You can always change your mind. We live in a society now where you're not allowed to make a mistake. You're not allowed to change your mind. You know, you're not allowed to.
Yeah.
But I think that that's important to be able to change your mind. It's important to be able to say I was wrong. It was important to say maybe we got this wrong, but we're working on it. You know, and everybody wants this, like, steady streamline of 100% empirical, credible evidence, and if anything strays from that straight line, then, you know, the whole thing's bunk, which I don't think's true at all, because as we know, life's not black or white, it's gray, and it's better to live in the gray than it is to live in that binary thinking, in my opinion. But
True. Yeah.
For sure.
so to the point of what we've been talking about, though, is where do you think this is all going? Do you think that we're going to see more to the Stars Entertainment stuff now, or do you think that we'll see maybe some more leaked videos, or where do you think this is going?
All right.
Here we go.
This is my opinion. I think that the first step was for people who already. The first step was for public support. The second step was for political. Now I'm not saying like political support, but what I mean, is help from government. Before the Great Depression, the government didn't really have a big role in helping. And today we have like social services and things like that. You know, I mean, the government does help. So the government can provide funding to the Stars as a public benefit corporation. So I think that the second step has been presenting the same evidence to our political leaders, the people who make decisions, the people that we elect to make decisions for us at Washington, that side of the real world, daily, week in, week out government, the ones who are able to control laws, funding, allocating funding, making decisions. You know, it's like bringing them on board. And I think that just as much as we have had a difficulty in the mainstream public or the civilian world with accepting this information and knowing what to do with it and knowing how it fits into the schemas that are already in our minds, now our elected leaders are having the exact same problems. Some of them want to be debriefed, some of them don't. We've seen recently some senators, and just to be very ambiguously descriptive, some political leaders have been really, really upset that they've been excluded from certain meetings unrelated to UFOs. So I could imagine that some senators would be really angry or upset that they were excluded from similar meetings that are about UFOs.
Right.
And I also imagine that some people still don't want this information to get out. Then there's the same responses, man. Steve said, and I'm not trying to just always act like the article I wrote was the holy grail, but he shared a lot of amazing, like very good information. The positive response, typical response, and the negative response. He said that he gets the eye roll response more often when he has to go talk with people in the government. That the response he got most often was the eye roll. So that would be somewhere between the positive and the typical. It's like
just so people can find it. Where can they find that article that they keep referring to?
Okay, the article I wrote. I'm sharing more details that were not actually put in the article, but the article is on the American Mensa website. It's also on my website under publications. So my website, of course, is tillerforrealer.com.
Okay.
And you can find a nicer looking version of the article. It's the PDF that has the picture of Tom DeLonge, a picture of Steve Justice, and some of the Navy videos. There's a picture of that. But if you want just the text, it's us.mensa.org, I think. Or if you just type into the stars Mensa, you can find the text that way. Anyways, on my YouTube channel, I have a playlist called "Unafraid to Investigate the Unexplained." It's I think like less than an hour long. It's 4 videos, and I talk about some of the stuff, and you hear some brief audio clips of what Steve's talking about. I also discuss the responses, but some of the things I'm telling you right now, they're not on my YouTube videos or in the article. Like when he said he talked with the government, he just made a brief comment. He was like, most often when I go talk with people in government, I get the eye roll, right? Like an eye roll response. Anyways, to put it to summarize it very quickly here, I think that in the very beginning of all this, it was like brutal for the public. Like people, like we had to experience the same responses, and we all had to figure out how to deal with this. And it was a big dent for the UFO community as well. It was a polarizing moment. And now, and what we're seeing right now is that our leaders, our higher ups, are receiving this evidence, because a lot of time the stuff that we get angry about for our leaders is almost like middle school drama. Mm-hmm. If something hits the news and we're all upset about Kim Kardashian or a dress that looks like it's blue and black, or it could be white and gold, and we're going crazy about it. Yeah. The politicians
Yanni.
don't. Oh my gosh. Our elected leaders don't care, So how are you going to get them to take any matter seriously? You have to present it in a serious way. So they've probably been presented with more evidence than we've seen. And there are some people who think it's demonic. I'm just being honest.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of people. There's lots of forums on Facebook and stuff that think that they're demons. I mean, who knows? They could be. I mean, but what's most people don't even realize where most people don't even know where the word demon comes from. It comes from daemon, which is a Greek terminology where it just used to mean like spirit. So like if you were hearing demons, it was like your inner dialogue or your subconscious, or it could have been you were actually hearing things, or maybe you were schizophrenic. Was
it Greek or Latin?
I'm pretty sure it's Greek.
Either way is fine.
But
they're very closely related.
But that's where that comes from. Most people don't even realize. Even the word apocalypse, when people say apocalypse, apocalypse just means lifting of the veil. It doesn't mean the end of the world and everything's going to blow up and this and that.
Yeah,
Apocalypse just means lifting of the veil, meaning that in the end there will be this truth that's unveiled or whatever. So I mean, people take things out of context. People, because obviously the Bible and different things, but people take things to mean different things than when their true the true meaning of the word or the true purpose of the word was actually something different originally. So
yeah.
But go ahead. Sorry.
To add to that, the book Revelation, like lifting the veil,
right.
Revelation, revealing. In the Spanish Bible, the name for the book of Revelation is not Revelación, but rather Apocalipsis, which is apocalypse. Pretty
right.
interesting. Another thing you said is just, another example I could give you is about the original meaning of words. The original meaning of Satan, the Hebrew is ha-satan, which means the adversary. And so here's an interesting verse. In Numbers 22:22, it says that the stood in the road against him as his adversary, because God was mad that Balaam was going to some place, and the angel of the Lord came and stood in the road and blocked him as the adversary. So essentially, from a grammatical standpoint, the angel of the Lord became a Satan, became an adversary, right? And so sometimes I've used just the grammar part of that to put an example to people. When is the last time that someone has treated you more like a Satan when they should have treated you like an angel of the Lord? Like the person acted like a block to you.
So it just means like adversary, basically. Adversary. Just like, Lucifer actually translates into bringer of light, which actually doesn't sound that terrible in the scheme of things. But.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, just it means the adversary.
All right, so let's get to, because we're going to wrap it up here soon, but I want to get to your slide that you prepared here.
Awesome.
This is your Tiller scale of...
existential acknowledgement.
Yeah, so... But why don't you explain what's going on here, too? Because I'm not going to be able to read that tiny print.
That's cool, man. Okay, so you guys are going to get the first explanation tutorial of how to read the Tiller scale. This is the scale. I designed the scale for people to talk about the possibility that there's extraterrestrial life out there. Now, in my personal opinion, I believe that this will be one of the many final destinations when we get done with disclosure/confirmation, and one of the things that we will discover through the efforts to the stars. In my opinion, it's a logical conclusion, but still, I cannot definitively say because we don't know. So we're all accustomed to seeing scales, and we all, read a scale to rate our pain or how much I liked my meal at Taco Bell tonight on a scale of 1 to 5. So I made my scale backwards because people always think 1 is the worst and 10 is the best. So I didn't want people to look at it as if it were just any old other scale. So it starts at number 10 and moves to your left. And what you're supposed to do is not rate yourself and give yourself some stars, but rather talk with someone else and have a conversation. So personally, I rate myself somewhere between like a 3 and a 2. I, Matt Tiller, believe that it's very probable that there are, given that life is not a rarity, that the possibility of life occurring is not a rarity, and given that there are so many other planets out there that have water that we can tell and that are in that Goldilocks zone, and also given the fact that you don't have to be in the Goldilocks zone to actually have a planet that could harbor life, as we're discovering with moons like Europa, Saturn and Jupiter's moons and things like that. I am willing to acknowledge that there are probably extraterrestrial civilizations out there somewhere. I personally am willing to acknowledge that those civilizations may or may not be trying to get in contact with us, just like how we are trying to get in contact with them. We sent the satellite into space, and it was like the 70s or so, with the little the images and a record player and things like that. Yeah. And we're also searching through the sky with SETI. So why would we have SETI at all if we didn't think that someone was trying to contact us, or that there was someone out there sending signals? It's like, so even people that think that SETI is a good thing to do can rate themselves between like a 4 and a 3. Now, this week I went to National Geographic Live and I saw Kevin Hand talk about the search for extraterrestrial life. And he was talking about his research on the moons, Jupiter's moons and Saturn's moons. Yeah. And he's got different planned missions and stuff. And so during the Q&A time, someone asked him what he thought. And did he honestly think that about all the stars and all the planets out there and how vast the universe is, that we are the only place that harbors life? And he took a minute and said that it was his personal opinion. But he basically said the same thing I did. So for me, vindication, Kevin Hand in public just rated himself at a 4 on the Tiller scale without even knowing it. He doesn't have a copy of my scale, but that's what he did. So everybody can rate themselves here somewhere. I have a problem with someone that would rate themselves at a 10 and not go beyond that. But just to be nice to someone who's that close-minded, I gave them their own special place on the scale with a little blue box. So it's not black, it's nice and it's pretty looking. And so they can, for someone who literally is maybe like too afraid or too unwilling or stubborn, for whatever reason, to even start looking at the other descriptions on the scale, I at least tried to make their mental home a little more comfortable. Sure. If that makes sense. I don't mean that in a condescending way, but I'm thinking of older people who might be very vulnerable, or older people who've been through war. I mean, come on, man. I don't know who may or may not be seeing this. So I wanted to try to give people something that can create real conversations about what we honestly think is possible. Right. That's it.
That's awesome. That's awesome that you made that whole thing too, and you obviously take this stuff seriously and research it from a standpoint of using science and knowledge, epistemology, and that kind of stuff, and ontology. Yeah. So we got a couple questions here from people. People want to know, is TTSA a disinformation program? And another person saying, it's all about the money. For me personally, I think it's too early to know anything like that. I think that if you look at who Tom DeLonge is, he's genuinely curious about the phenomena. So for it to be a disinformation program, it would have to be people higher up than him feeding him the information, knowing that he's either going to eat it up, believe it, whatever. And that goes like on down the line. That would be my opinion on it. I don't think that you can truly say for certain one way or the other at this point. I mean, I don't think that we have nearly the amount of answers that we need to make these kinds of decisions,
I have a question for someone who asks that question. And again, I'm glad, I'm humbled that people are actually asking questions, man. That's awesome. What disinformation? Like, if someone says that TTSA is spreading disinformation, okay, what is it?
Right. Yeah, exactly. What are you talking about?
I think when people point to that stuff, I think it's mainly that they're saying that they're doing this for money, and they're doing, they're trying to do this and they're trying to do that. For me, I look at it like this. He's already rich. He's a rock star. For him, something that he just finds interesting, like if we all get to the point within our careers where we can then pursue things that we find passionate, whether it's, is there life beyond this life, or what are we? Why are we here? Those kinds of things. We should be so lucky to make a living at doing such things. Now, go through the gauntlet of that. If he's already rich himself, that makes no sense to me. It's probably
success is usually gauged by money, so
right, and it may or may not be
break away from these things.
Like I said, it may or may not be real. Like the information, like look, we're studying all this stuff. Consciousness. That's in the new books, God, Man, and War, Part 2. Part 2, Man. It's all about consciousness. What is consciousness? They call it the hard problem of consciousness for a reason, because they can't figure it out. We can't crack that, So I think it comes down to a lot of things, and I don't know that you can just say it's disinformation or this or that. I think the disinformation people are some of the people that have radio shows and websites dedicated to what they think is truth, and then they're pushing their own agendas and stuff like that. I think some of those are disingenuous, because you have people, and I'm not going to name names again, but you have people that have other shows that talk about the credibility of TTSA, but then they'll have people on talking about how there's the face of a gray alien in Antarctica on the ground. It's like, are you kidding me? You're an idiot if you believe that that's not pareidolia. So it's like, for me, it's like, what is disinformation? I think there's smart people out there, and then there's, no offense, dumb people out there.
Yeah, it's like,
and the dumb people tend to follow. They tend to
follow.
They follow, but they also don't look into things themselves, and they don't do their own research. And I think that, look, if TTSA is doing that, who knows? But at the same time, it's like we don't know enough. We don't know enough at this point to make certain whether this is right or this is wrong. We know in the past that there have been disinformation agents, there have been disinformation programs. Those things have existed. So it's one of those weird things where you kind of have to tread lightly. But at the end of the day, me personally, I just, like I said, I stand in the gray. I stand in the middle. I will always just seek whatever I think is truth, or take pieces from here, pieces from there, put my own stuff together. I don't rely on one thing or another. It's just wholeheartedly, whether it be this group or another group or whatever the case may be. It's I think it should always be up to the personal or the person to deduct their own reasoning on what they think is actually happening. I think we should stop relying on entire groups of people to make decisions for people. Just come to your own conclusion, do your own research, study consciousness, study the mind, study the origins. Before this episode just now, we just did one on the pre-Socratic Greek philosophers. I put a whole slideshow presentation together about how we've gotten to where we are through science and the mind and questioning mythology, and how, there used to be a mythological explanation for things like, this ship went down because Poseidon was mad and he conjured up huge waves. And then you got Thales coming along. He's like, no, this, that's not the explanation. There's a natural explanation for these things. So it's like, you got to think critically. You got to, look into epistemology, ontology, and just, what do we know? How do we know it? And go from there. It doesn't matter who the group is or who's researching it. So that's just my opinion on it.
No, that's very true. You got to implement different schools of thought to make it make sense. So it's almost like using different camera angles on a movie set. If you're watching a movie or a TV show with just one camera, you're not going to get a full scope, and you're not going to be able to put it together to make sense of one concise story or explanation. I will add that I think one direction that people might want to start checking out now, if they want to kind of see where the game is going, would be experiencer stories, to where it's and I'm not trying to tell anybody to go on a rabbit chase, going down rabbit holes or anything, but I believe that at some point in this process very soon, attention will be given to people for them to just share their own personal stories.
Okay.
Not necessarily like the crazy story, like something crazy or outlandish, but just the attention will be brought to the fact that people like us, non-military, non-government, non-law enforcement, have had legitimate experiences too. Do I have to be Commander Fravor to have a legitimate encounter? Do I have to be CIA or military or anything, or work at the DMV, for crying out loud? I mean, do I have to have some type of government affiliation in order to have a credible story? No. So I think that attention will be brought to that idea that you can be non-government and have a legitimate story. So just like we're going into consciousness now. I think the experiencer story will come later. And look, I'm not trying to like toot my own horn here, but there are quite a few things, and even like minor details that I've presented before they were even like a thing. Before in some of my videos, I've tried to put like Easter eggs, and like little ideas. Consciousness. I started including images of things like that in my videos months ago. The UFO that did a barrel roll over the pilot, and gave him radiation exposure. I included a little imagery of that in March.
They talk about that in God's Man of War Part 2, too, the radiation aspect of the encounters.
Okay, good. I'm glad we're talking about it. There's several things. Look, like the TTSA publishing Bob's book, that was announced in Tom's interview with Joe Rogan. So that was that was years ago.
Yeah, I think that interview still haunts him to this day. And even when on both the Lazar and the Fravor episode, they both mention him, I think, and they're like, don't talk. Or they pull up a video that has the stars logo or watermark on it. He's like, take that one down. Show me another one. Like, obviously, Joe has, he's, I don't know if he doesn't like Tom or just thinks he's full of shit or whatever, but there was definitely, that was definitely not a good look either way. I just think that he should have waited till a lot of, like, now would be a good time after they've released all this stuff and did all this stuff to go back on there, because at the time he wasn't allowed to talk about a lot of stuff, so he was constantly saying, I'm not allowed to talk about that, or I'm not permitted to talk about that.
Episode.
Yeah.
Let's get this guy on there.
I'm gonna call something. This is my prediction. There is a definite connection between the schools of thought. There seem to be like almost two schools of thought or two camps that have developed here. You've got Jeremy Corbell and George Knapp, both of whom I have utmost respect for. In fact, I reached out to Jeremy and George for help with something, and I ran across some information that wasn't my area of expertise, and I thought that they could check it out, and so I did that, and I don't know if it's going to amount to much, but I'm glad that they were able to help me out, right? And I think they're great. Then there's TTSA, which has gained a lot of strength and momentum, especially within the past year.
Right.
So, I don't see these two schools of thought or these two camps as mutually exclusive. I think that there's a connection here, whether on purpose or not, even if it just kind of happened that way. I mean, look, Jeremy Corbell was on Joe Rogan with David Fravor. Am I correct?
He was on with both Fravor and Lazar. However, a lot of people don't like him based on those interviews. I don't know if he came off. It seems like people just wanted to hear those two talk alone and not have some third party in there. It seemed like he was pushing his documentary and his views and stuff like that. I personally don't have a problem with him. I think he seems like a nice guy. He actually he commented on the video you and I did about the Bob Lazar review. Actually, he was he confirmed what I had pointed out about that Dennis guy or whatever at the. People check out that episode that we did about Bob Lazar if they're interested. But yeah, man. I mean. Go ahead.
Can I also give there's a video that's gotten way more views than I ever thought it would, was UFO Physics, the responding logically to illogical reasoning. I basically just take Tom's description of things that he has said publicly about how a UFO could operate, and Bob Lazar's descriptions too, and just using pseudoscience or theoretical science, I kind of merge those two together to discuss how they could potentially operate. Where basically what it is like Bob has described the inside, like the motor, right, and Tom has described like the steering wheel, of how the outside of the craft has something to do with the propulsion mechanism of the inside. So
Gotcha.
I did my best to merge those two together, and I actually consulted non-UFO related affiliates with NASA, who I know personally. I actually consulted 2 professors from a university who teach physics. I consulted a professor on ontology. That interview's coming later. I mean, I really dug deep on this series, and I'm not done with the series. It's gonna take me so long, man.
Well, that's cool.
Because I've got some good things going on. Like I auditioned for TEDx today, which I think went really well. I hope that it'll continue to go well. Let's see. I'm talking with a TV producer about a idea for a reality series that I have. I hope that continues to go well. This guy has produced stuff that I know for a fact you've heard of. It's just I don't want to start throwing out names and stuff. I mean, people really like you say UFO in public, and it's like you poop in the pool, man. Everybody like runs away fast, It's
right.
I know it's
serious,
still not being accepted.
And that is what I want to study. I want to study those reactions if I go out in public and ask someone, what do you think about extraterrestrial life, and I present this scale, and I talk to people, or I show them these reports from the Scientific Coalition of UAP Studies, or I show them Lou Elizondo or things. I want to study those reactions, because for me, it's not necessarily whether or not the UAPs are real or whether or not they're actually RETs. Those reactions tell me about the inner working of someone else's minds and how they could possibly form judgments of other real world things.
Sure. No,
So as a psychologist, man, I'm all over it.
So let's wrap it up here. You can check out Matt's stuff. I have his information below. Check out his YouTube channel, Tiller for Riller. He's got some good videos on this topic on there. Also, he's on Twitter. What's your Twitter handle?
Tiller for Riller. And Instagram, too. Yeah,
okay, cool. Everybody
check
him out on there. Again, check us out on Patreon, patreon.com/MikeandMaurice. We have some exclusive content for $2 a month. And MikeandMauriceMindescape.com. And thanks again for coming on, Matt. And
thanks, guys.
We will have you back on in the near future if something else pops up.
Awesome.
And
sure.
Look forward to having you on. And if something new breaks or something, we'll try and do a little back and forth.
Keep you posted.
Awesome. Thanks, man. Guys, it's always a pleasure. I love talking with you. It's a lot of fun.
Same here.
Have a happy Halloween, everybody. Be safe, and peace.
Boo.
Awesome.